In the soil of a humble Bulgarian village, a riddle has slept for decades. For more than 30 years, people have asked the same question. What did the army find beneath Tsarichina? You see that? I did pronounce it right. Back in 1990, soldiers arrived with trucks, engineers, and weapons. They built fences and told the villagers to stay away. The project was called Operation Sunray, and it cost millions of dollars. Some say the army was just digging for gold. Bit strange. Others believe they were hunting for something far stranger, possibly even an alien being, or maybe even a door to another world. Today, we'll talk about the mystery of Tsarichina Hole and explore the possible theories of what could have happened deep underground. Bulgaria has always carried the scars of conflict. From the Thracians to the Romans to the Ottomans and then later the Soviets, empire after empire tried to crush it, and each time the people fought back, holding tight to their stories, their land, and their legends. Tsarichina was really just a quiet village, tucked into the hills about 20 miles northwest of Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria. Before 1990, most people in the country had never even heard of its name. Life there was simple, with just farms, fields, and narrow dirt roads, winding between old stone houses. Nothing about it seemed really all that important. Nothing about it seemed dangerous. But beneath the soil, stories had lived for centuries. Folklore whispered that long ago, Emperor Samuel, one of Bulgaria's greatest rulers, had hidden a treasure here before marching into battle with the Ottomans. Gold, jewels, and priceless relics, an entire fortune buried somewhere near Tsarichina. The legend survived through the ages, told around firesides and passed from one generation to the next. It was a tale of pride, of a king protecting his people's wealth from invaders, and then by the late 20th century, it became more than just a story. It became the army's reason, or at least the reason that they gave, to dig into the earth. For the villagers, the arrival of soldiers seemed strange, but not impossible. After all, who wouldn't want to find a king's hidden fortune? But as the weeks turned into months and the digging went deeper, it became clear that the soldiers were searching for something far more mysterious than just treasure, something that had been waiting in the darkness below. On December 6, 1990, the silence of Tsarichina was broken. Before dawn, villagers watched as military trucks, armored vehicles, and soldiers rolled into their quiet fields. The farmland on the edge of the village was seized, fenced off, and guarded day and night. No one would be allowed near it. At the center of it all was Colonel Zvetko Kanev, the commander of this unusual mission. To the public, the Ministry of Defense explained the operation simply. The army was searching for the lost treasure of Emperor Samuel. It sounded like an adventure from legend, a patriotic duty to recover Bulgaria's ancient wealth. But inside the quarantine zone, the truth felt much stranger. Soldiers began digging, driving heavy machinery into the ground. A deep shaft was opened, cutting into the soil that had been undisturbed for centuries. Yet almost immediately, the work would go wrong. Excavators broke down for no clear reason. Drills jammed, electrical tools sparked and failed. Even the tanks guarding the site seemed to malfunction. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, that just sounds like the Bulgarian military, but frustrated, the soldiers had no choice but to set aside their machines. They turned to pickaxes, shovels, and their own strength, clawing deeper into the earth by hand. And soon, another problem appeared: water. An underground lake threatened to flood the shaft, making every hour of digging even more dangerous. Still, the work continued, but their failures weren't only mechanical. Radios stopped transmitting. When landline phones were used instead, operators reported voices no one could explain. Guards on duty swore they saw strange figures in the darkness beyond the floodlights. Probably just villagers, or village kids. I don't know. All this is just sounding like a really poorly funded military with really crappy equipment so far. But anywho, they would speak of giant humanoid shadows, others of small darting beings moving faster than the eye could follow. The villagers were told it was just treasure hunting. But for those inside the fence, Operation Sunray was quickly becoming something far more terrifying. For weeks, the soldiers dug deeper into the earth, battling broken machines, flooding, and whispers on the line. And then, about 6 meters down, or in the Lord's unit, about 18 feet, their tools struck something different. Beneath the soil was a solid layer of stone, so thick that their shovels and pickaxes could not break through it, which you'd have to ask yourself, okay, well if this, well not modern anymore, but if this modern military with modern equipment then couldn't break through this, then how was somebody hiding their treasure like centuries ago? Anyways, Colonel Kanov ordered explosives. The ground trembled as controlled charges shattered the barrier. When the dust cleared, what the soldiers saw left them stunned. The blast had opened a passageway, but this was not a natural cave, thanks Cortana. It was carved, smooth, deliberate, and ancient. A spiral-shaped tunnel descended into the darkness, curling downward like a coiled serpent. The walls seemed too perfect, too strange to have been formed by nature. That means someone built it, which means it must go somewhere. Teams of soldiers stepped cautiously into the passage, their lights cutting through the shadows. Some reported a faint hum vibrating in the stone. Others felt dizzy, as if the air itself were pressing against them. That's what we like to call stale air. Just as a heads up, if you ever go like caving or anything, which I mean I do, like if you have to dive down into water and then come up on the other side, you don't know how many people have done that before you. Or if there's like a gas leak or something, and that means the air is never really getting out of that area and being replenished. It's called stale air, and it's very dangerous to breathe because before you know it, like you've already breathed in so much and so little oxygen that when you try to swim back, you'll just drown. So anyways, a few refused to go any further because they were intelligent, whispering that something inside of the tunnel wanted them to turn back. Their intuition. All right, I'm gonna stop breaking in. Outside, the army tried to keep control, insisting this was still about gold, but inside that spiral, it felt nothing like treasure hunting. The deeper they dug, the stronger the unnatural sensations became. Guards patrolling the fences began to whisper about figures in the night. Some swore that they saw these giant beings, 7 feet tall, moving silently along the fields. Others claimed that tiny creatures no taller than to a child's knee darted through the grass and then hid in the shadows. At the same time, the Army's technology continued to fail. Trucks would break down. Tanks just outright refused to start. Whenever anybody would try to talk on the radio, it would give only static. The only working lines of communication were old landline phones, yet even those carried something that was fairly unsettling. The aforementioned voices cutting in mid-call, speaking in languages that no one could understand. Then came the skies. Villagers began reporting glowing craft that hovered above Tsarichina, glowing white and orange, sometimes trailing flames as they sped off into the distance. The military tried to keep this quiet, but the sightings grew too frequent to ignore. One of the most mysterious cases came in June of 1992. Local woman Alka Kirova was outside her home when she spotted 3 dark, shadowy figures near the site. Before she could react, a blinding white light tore upward into the sky. Soldiers rushed to investigate and found a perfect scorched circle on the ground, as if something had landed and then lifted off again. Within hours, both Kirova and several soldiers fell gravely ill. They were weak, feverish, and could barely leave their beds for days. No doctor could explain just what happened. And this wasn't the only case. Months earlier, in November of 1991, villager Grutro Korvarev reported being swallowed by a beam of light. When Korvarev woke, he was lying on a dirt road more than 40 miles away. He had no memory of what happened, and the last thing he recalled was the light. The incident would then shake the village, and news of abductions started spreading quickly. After months of digging, they finally struck something that was a bit bizarre. A massive slab of stone, smooth and shining, shaped like a giant lens. It pulsed faintly with a blue-green glow as if it were alive. Explosives would be used again, and the barrier gave way. Behind it lay a circular chamber unlike anything on Earth. Its walls were mirror-like, reflecting the torchlight in endless ripples. Along the stone, soldiers saw symbols etched deep into the rock, strange marks that looked like an ancient hieroglyph but belonged to no known language. And then they would see it. At the far end of the chamber, fused to the wall itself, were the skeletal remains of towering figures. Over 2 meters tall, its bones seemed locked in stone, as though the earth had swallowed it alive. Some later called this being the Sentinel. But entering the chamber came at a price. Invisible barriers of force hurled the men backward with bone-breaking power. Soldiers staggered out, their bodies bruised and bleeding. Some collapsed soon after, stricken with a mysterious sickness. Doctors could not explain the fevers or the sudden deaths. Others vanished in even stranger ways. Rumors spread of soldiers who were teleported out of the chamber, or worse, discovered fused inside the solid rock. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became. Tsarichina was no ordinary site. Something ancient, or perhaps not of this world, had been buried there, and whatever it was, it did not want to be disturbed. By late 1992, the Tsarichina dig had spiraled far beyond anyone's control. Soldiers were terrified, men reported of invisible walls that struck like fists of sickness that spread without cause, and shadows moving in the tunnels when no one was there. Colonel Kanev, once firm in his orders, could no longer ignore the fear. After the growing list of dead or missing, he made the hardest choice of his career. The operation was officially abandoned. Worst of all were the attacks. Soldiers described an invisible force that shoved them, struck them, and even killed some of the men during the night. In the end, Kanev ordered the tunnels collapsed and sealed with concrete. He later admitted the story of treasure was only a cover-up. The real project was guided not by science or archaeology, but by psychics and visions. The cost was enormous. Over $15 million had been spent in just 2 years. And for what? Officially, the government announced that no treasure had actually been found. The story was quietly closed, but the soldiers and psychics who had been there knew the truth was far stranger. The soldiers were not digging alone. From the very beginning, the Bulgarian army brought in psychics and remote viewers. This was kind of all the rage back then. And actually, I have a video over declassified CIA documents about this, where people in the US obviously were given coordinates and they were supposed to remote view Soviet facilities. And actually, there were a couple of them that basically knew the inside of these places almost to a T. And it was only confirmed after the Cold War ended. So it's actually pretty interesting. But these were people who claimed that they could sense things hidden from normal eyes. They gave them the buried mystery name of Object Number 1. At first, the psychics described feelings of a presence, something ancient, something alive. Their warnings clashed with a soldier's mission, but Colonel Kanev listened, even if he did not always believe them. One of the strongest voices was Ellie Loganova, a psychic who worked directly with the army. She claimed the being under Tsarichina was one of mankind's oldest ancestors, a creature with immense psychic powers. According to her visions, even Hitler had once searched for this same being during World War II. Ellie said that the entity showed her the future. Solar-powered spacecraft gliding across the stars, armor that bullets could not pierce, strange new technology far beyond human reach. She wrote down everything that she saw in 4 journals, but those journals did not stay with her. The military seized them, locking away her words just as they had sealed the tunnels. Another key figure would be Marina Nanov, the daughter of respected military professor Colonel Delcho Nanov. Marina herself had hidden psychic abilities, and it was Baba Vanga, Bulgaria's most famous seer, who warned her personally, do not disturb the creature that sleeps beneath Tsarichina. But Marina joined the project anyways. She worked closely with Colonel Kanov. Those who knew her said she came back from Tsarichina a different person, haunted, changed, and broken. In time, the weight of what she had experienced became too heavy, and Maria would go on to end her own life. Soon after, her father Delcho was met a tragic end as well, leaving behind writings that preserved fragments of the truth. The tunnel was sealed. The soldiers were gone, but the questions would stay behind. What had they really found in the black depths of Tsarichina? The first theory is the most popular, and perhaps the most haunting theory, is possibly that the army had uncovered something not human at all. Whispers spoke of a figure in the wall, a giant body curled in stone, surrounded by strange markings. Soldiers said the chamber they entered looked polished, shining like a mirror. Others claimed the walls carried symbols unknown to science or mankind in general. Psychics brought into the project fueled the fire. Ellie Loganova, the army's psychic consultant, told commanders that the being uncovered was actually not dead, but sleeping. She called it the Sentinel, and according to her, this was one of humanity's ancient ancestors. Not a normal ancestor, but a visitor from the stars who had shaped mankind's evolution. Her writings, later seized by the army, described visions of the future, which were, the spacecraft sailing near the sun, using solar energy, soldiers in bulletproof armor that bent light, and technology far beyond Bulgaria's reach. Which, all right, okay. Maybe we go with like a more technologically advanced. I'm just shitting on Bulgaria a little bit, but okay. So she said the Sentinel was trying to guide humanity once more, if only it could be freed. The legend even tied back to Adolf Hitler. Loganova insisted the Nazi leader had once sent agents searching for this very site, hoping to control the power hidden underground. It gave Tsarichina the flavor of a story stretching across centuries, an ancient force that powerful men wanted for themselves. And as we all know, according to Indiana Jones, they would just go after the Ark of the Covenant later. Soldiers reported hearing the voices as if instructions were being whispered into their minds, which is really sounding a lot like the marker from Dead Space. Radios failed underground as if the rock itself resisted human communication. The chamber walls were said to be smooth, unlike anything natural. No treasure was ever shown to the public, suggesting something stranger was definitely found there. But no body was ever produced. No photographs were leaked. No physical evidence of an alien ancestor had surfaced. All reports of the Sentinel come secondhand through psychics or soldiers speaking just years later. The giant in the wall may have been an illusion caused by uneven stone, shadows, or the human brain's tendency to see faces in random shapes. Look at the face on Mars. we saw a face, but it's not really a face, it's just a collection of rocks. Still, the idea of an alien ancestor buried beneath Bulgaria captured imaginations. It gave Tsarichina a mythology as powerful as Egypt's pyramids or Peru's Nazca lines. The second theory, which is pretty interesting, says that soldiers did not find a body at all, but a machine. Those who support this theory believe the chamber was part of a spacecraft buried in the earth thousands of years ago. When the soldiers broke through, they stepped not into a tomb, but into the remains of an alien craft. The slab they uncovered could have been sealed, like a sealed hatch basically. The polished walls may have been made of unknown alloys. The strange radio interference and reports of glowing orbs at night could have just been a distress signal activated once the chamber was breached. The idea of a buried ship is actually not too unique. Around the world, stories exist of star machines hidden beneath the mountains or deserts of Earth. Bulgaria, once part of the crossroads of many ancient civilizations, could easily hold such a secret. The army spent millions, far more than reasonable for a simple treasure hunt. In fact, they probably spent as much as they would have even gotten out of it. Some soldiers spoke of feeling watched in the tunnels as if the place itself was alive. Villagers reported seeing lights in the sky above Tsarichina during its excavation, and the tunnels were sealed with explosives as if to contain something dangerous. But no fragments of advanced metal were ever recovered. If it was a ship, the army gave no signs of taking pieces out. UFO researchers often link unrelated lights in the sky to alien craft, but meteors, satellites, or planes could actually explain pretty much all of them. Even with these doubts, the crashed spacecraft theory has staying power. It turns Tsarichina from a local mystery into part of a larger global puzzle. Are ancient ships buried across the world, waiting for us to explore them? Maybe. That'd be pretty cool. Some say Tsarichina is not about bodies or machines at all, but about doors. According to this theory, the tunnels tapped into a gateway, an opening between our world and another. Supporters point to strange events that are happening. Soldiers claimed they saw giant figures in the dark, only to blink and find them gone. Others said tiny beings, almost like children, appeared and then vanished. Equipment broke down without cause. Some men grew sick with symptoms that faded after leaving the site. These events mirror other paranormal hotspots around the world. In the United States, Skinwalker Ranch became infamous for reports of portals, creatures, and lights in the sky. In the Atlantic Ocean, the Bermuda Triangle is said to swallow ships and planes without a trace. In fact, what is it? I have like an uncle, not an uncle, it's like a second uncle or something like that. Personally, the family lore says he just bailed out with his wife. But he had a bunch of kids, allegedly. This is just what's said. And he and his wife got on a boat that he owned, went into the Bermuda Triangle, and then never came back. Like I said, that dude is sitting on a beach drinking from a coconut. But anyways, but you also have Montauk, New York, rumors of government experiments with time and dimensions basically being warped, and all those remain to this day. If Tsarichina was such a portal, it could explain the secrecy. A doorway to another world that is not a treasure you can polish or display. It is a threat, a mystery, or perhaps even a weapon. But what's interesting is multiple witnesses reported these impossible creatures. Sudden disappearances of tools and records were whispered about. The tunnel system itself seemed to lead nowhere, as if guiding soldiers to confusion. But strangely, no physical proof of a portal has ever been documented. Stress, darkness, and exhaustion could make the men hallucinate, that much is very true, but stories of portals are actually common in folklore, but rarely hold up under scrutiny. Still, the interdimensional theory adds a mystery. If true, the tunnels were not like a dead end, but actually a beginning to somewhere humanity might not be meant to go. Another theory suggests that the soldiers suffered just from mass hysteria brought on by extreme stress. The conditions were brutal. Men worked long shifts in damp, narrow tunnels. The air was poor. Machines failed constantly because of Bulgaria. Rumors of hidden treasure or strange beings spread unchecked, feeding this fear. Radios crackled and then died, leaving men in silence, and above them, commanders pushed for progress, demanding results that never came. Psychologists know that in such conditions, the human mind loves to create illusions. A shadow on the wall becomes a figure. A stone that looks slightly human becomes a giant ancestor. Stress spreads like fire. One soldier panics, and soon they are all convinced that something is wrong. The theory fits with actually other military incidents. During isolation or intense operations, soldiers have reported ghosts, voices, and visions that later prove to be tricks of the mind. This happens actually in the U.S. If you talk to basically any soldier of any base ever, they all have like the same type of stories about how they were told there's people who, I don't know, somebody in the military is going to have to say, but basically ghosts. They say that there's ghosts out there, other soldiers who didn't make it back or died during basic or just something like that, and then that they actually run across them. It's pretty interesting. Like every military has its folklore, because I mean it's enough people to make folklore. But even with all this said, no physical proof of aliens, ships, or portals has ever been discovered. All unusual reports come from witnesses under extreme stress. Psychics, known for suggestion and imagination, are also heavily involved, so take that with a grain of salt. The sudden sealing of the tunnels hints at something serious. Not all soldiers agreed it was just stress. Some insisted something real was there. So which theory is the most likely? The ancient alien ancestor is dramatic, but without bones or artifacts, it kind of rests only on stories. The crashed spacecraft sounds plausible, but no physical trace remains. The interdimensional portal matches folklore, but has no scientific support. The strongest explanation is just mass hysteria and stress. The conditions were perfect for it. Isolation from the outside world, secrecy that stopped open discussion, poor working conditions underground, rumors encouraged by commanders who wanted results, psychics who fed them in stories of giants and voices. When the tunnels collapsed or failed, the army may have simply cut its losses. Rather than admit failure, they sealed the site with concrete and declared the matter closed. And that does not explain everything. The millions spent, the secrecy, the testimonies of soldiers who still swear decades later that something unnatural lived beneath Tsarichina. But if we strip away the legend, what is left with this? Tsarichina was a place where human minds, under pressure, built their own nightmare, a story born of shadows sealed in concrete and left to grow in the dark. And maybe that is why it still haunts us to this day. But you know, I always like to break in here at the end and discuss these types of things. Have you ever seen what the government does when they make a mistake? The military, the government, it's kind of hand in hand at this point. But when any type of anything is proposed that, hey, this is what we need to go find, this is what we need to do, we need to take this area, blah, blah, blah. If it fails, it's called shifting blame, right? So the best way you can shift blame is just kind of washing your hands of it. And I think personally, maybe they were, like, it seems to me that it's entirely possible that they actually really were just looking for treasure, which they were like, oh, we estimate that the treasure in today's capacity would be $150 million. So if we just spend 15, which is only 10%, we'll come out with $135 million, and that'll help Bulgaria, which is, you know, I mean, yeah, obviously that bolsters their, I guess, country. That's what you would want to do. But in spending that and then not finding anything, you've got kind of a complex bit of, I guess, politics at play here, right? Is the best way to put it. The first thing is that Bulgarian infrastructure, or like its equipment that it would be using, I'm not shitting on Bulgaria when I say this, but not great, right? It's one of those things where it's a smaller country. It doesn't have quite the budget. These are hand-me-downs, I believe, from Soviet, like basically leftover stuff from Soviet Russia, which the Soviets weren't exactly, I mean, didn't the Soviets build the Gremlin or something like that? It's this crappy car, but the point is that the equipment was aging, and now they were digging through rock and dirt trying to get to something that would actually be useful. So when the soldiers started being worked as hard as they were in order to actually continue digging, it's very likely that they were just exhausted and up for way longer. And the biggest thing about being up for as long as, you know, they can, you should go watch my video over double blind on Roanoke Gaming to discuss sort of what happens when you're up for a few days. You hallucinate and you become paranoid. And it happens way faster than people realize. Like, you'll start seeing flickers of shadows and lights within probably about 36 hours. And it's not crazy to think that soldiers were awake for 36 hours. So as this continued and they didn't find anything and the budget was getting more expensive and yada, 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 you kind of have a situation where they probably realized they were in the wrong place, or maybe there really was nothing there. And they're just like, crap. Well, we can't just leave this giant hole in the ground. So let's cover it up. Right? So they just filled it with concrete so that nobody would go in there. There wouldn't have to be rescue missions sent if there was some sort of collapse or something like that for like villagers and everything. To me, this just kind of sounds like they attempted to find actual treasure, spend a ton of money, realize it wasn't there, and then they're like, okay, well, now we need to, you know, seal this tunnel up, which is pretty standard, I believe. And then from there, in the absence of information, stories began to spread. You're talking 35 years later at this point. It's kind of like making a copy of a copy of a copy. Eventually, people just keep talking and things get added on. Now, soldiers claiming what they claim. I mean, hallucinations do exist. It is interesting, but to me, it also, with all these other people at play, it kind of adds in maybe, what is the best cover, right, for something? If you do something stupid, is it better for somebody to think that you did something stupid and then question the government? Or is it better to assume that they found something dangerous and they had no choice but to cover it up? Because then it takes out essentially inept politicians from making decisions that are stupid and a waste of money, and then kind of puts it onto, well, it was aliens. Well, it was ancient human. And to me, it just kind of seems like the cover-up isn't a cover-up for something that cool. It's just a cover-up for money mismanagement and a project that was not well researched and that was doomed from the start. So the best way to do it is just, hey, if people want to think it's ancient humans and spacecraft and all that, let them think it. Because at the end of the day, the politician's still fine for making that decision. And to me, that kind of seems like the most likely outcome. Then again, I don't trust politicians. I don't like them. I understand their necessary evil, but I'm not exactly sitting down for a beer with them. Anyhow, I want to say I appreciate you guys watching. If you did enjoy, then please leave a like as it helps get the video out there. And subscribing is a great way to stay up to date when I post. I want to thank my patrons real quick. At the Literal Wendigo tier, we have Grayson West, Invictus Echo, Monkey Man, and Scrungle. Thank you guys. At the Eyewitness event tier, we have Beaver Malaga and Dragon Master Knight. Thank you guys as well. And at the secondhand accounts tier, we have Bianca, Fred Rush, Pouches, Stutz, and Troy. And to the rest of my patrons, I do appreciate y'all's support as well. It goes a long way towards helping out, so thank you. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see y'all in the next one.